And that is very sad if you lose a colleague who you've worked with for a very long time and who you get along with really well, and then they leave. But sometimes that's the best thing for the culture of the school, is if you have someone who leaves. And sometimes it is the people who've been there for 20 years. Sometimes it's been those people who have been there. They've seen 5 principals through, and now they get this new principal who wants to change the culture. They're going to feel like, why should I change? I've been here for 20 years. I've seen 5 principals. Like, every single principal has something new that I have to follow. Why should I follow you? In today's episode, I'll be speaking with school leaders, principals, and heads of departments about how they can rebuild a school culture that's become toxic, negative, and just not what you want it to be.
Do you wish that you could lead your team in a way that honors and glorifies God? Are you struggling to overcome self-doubt as a leader and have a desire to be more confident in your role? Welcome to the Women of Faith in Leadership podcast. I'm Rika, and for the last decade, I've experienced my fair share of managing challenging employees and teams in middle management leadership roles. I committed my leadership journey to God, and it changed everything. And I'm ready to share everything I've learned with you. Now, if you're ready to lead your team in a way that honors God, grab that notebook and pen, and don't forget your chai latte, and let's dive in.
And before we jump into the episode, I want to invite you into the Women of Faith in Leadership community, a space created just for female Christian leaders like you. If you've ever felt isolated in your leadership role, unsure if anyone else is facing the same challenges of culture clashes, confidence struggles, or just trying to honor God while leading well, you are 100% not alone. This free community is a safe space to ask hard questions, grow spiritually and professionally, and connect with other women who truly get you and who truly get it. Plus, I share exclusive leadership teaching in the group every fortnight that you won't hear here on the podcast. So if you're craving connection and want to lead with more clarity, confidence, and biblical truth, come and join us. Just go to womenoffaithinleadership.com and click join the community. Or you can go to Facebook and search for Women of Faith in Leadership Community, and you'll find it there. Just simply click join the community or join the group when you're on Facebook. I've shared many times on the podcast the difficult and toxic cultures I've faced in the various places that I've worked. And I believe that those are relevant because God wanted me to go through that so I can share with you what I went through and how you can deal with that. But instead of focusing on that again in this episode, I thought I would rather share a really great example of how to rebuild a culture from one of my line managers. And she was the principal of the school that I was working at as a director. And I'd like to share with you what I learned from her and from the way that she dealt with the culture at that school. Now, the school is a huge school. It's actually a from kindergarten to year 12 school. So there are a lot of staff to cover the whole school. And there's a primary school. We don't have middle school in Australia, but then there's also the senior school. So if you can imagine, being a principal of a big school like that can be challenging because you really have to be on the pulse of what happens. And the one main important thing that is a big school like that, or even if you're a littler school, like you're not as huge or as big as this school, what you need is a leadership team. And it's with your leadership team that you're really going to start working hands-on. And then through your leadership team, it's going to flow through to all the other departments. So think about a triangle. The principal or the school leader, if that's you, you're at the top of that triangle. And below you is the people in your leadership team. So this could be maybe the principal of the primary school or the principal of the senior school or a head of primary or head of senior or head of middle school. And then from there, you've got all your leaders that are below them, so everybody who reports directly to them. And then below them is either all the employees and people who they line manage, basically. So if you think about it in a triangle, principal at the top and everybody, it flows down in this triangle. And everybody else is inside this triangle. And so when I joined this school, this principal was actually also new to the school. And so she picked up that there was a disconnect with the culture. I believe she would have probably had a handover with the previous principal as well. And look, I don't know what was said from principal to principal, but I just know what I experienced as someone who was also in a leadership role in this school. And she was not my direct line manager. My direct line manager was the principal of the primary school. And then so she was my two up, and so I met with her on a fortnightly basis to feedback about my department, and that's how she had her finger on the pulse, is by meeting with me and my line manager on a fortnightly basis so that she could know what's going on in my department. And I'm fairly sure she did that with the other departments as well. Now, when it came to this culture issue, what she did was she organized a leadership culture training. So for 2 weeks on a Monday, I think it was the Monday or the Tuesday, all the leaders from the whole school, and yes, this is a lot to organize, but she did manage it. It was all head of departments would sit in this culture training. And so what did she do? She started with us as leaders. She first trained us on culture, and obviously she got a reputable trainer in, someone who she would have had a discussion with before the time about what is the expectation of the training, what she wants out of this training, and how can they really deliver a training that's going to lead the school to a brand new culture. That's a lot, and that's a lot of trust to put in a training organization. But if you are looking at training, don't just go online and pick the first person. You need to meet with these people, speak with them, ask them what can they offer you, how are they going to go about it, what experience do they have with schools specifically. And I know people are people, so you can have somebody who has done corporate training and apply that to a school, but then that person really needs to be on board with what's going on in your school culture, and they need to understand the dynamics of a school and the hierarchy, which I basically just explained in a nutshell with a triangle. So then from the leaders, what happened was we had the leadership training. And so look, I think there was about an 8-month difference between when the leaders got their training and when the whole school had their training. And now the reason for that was simply timing. You cannot have all your school staff off training. I mean, what are you going to do with the kids? What are you going to do with the students? So it had to be practical as well. So once a year, in January, because in Australia our school year starts in January. I know in the USA your school year starts in September. So before the children arrive, we had an all-school staff professional development. So every single year, everybody knew there was one day that you were not allowed to call in sick, because this is the day that we have our all-school PLD, or professional learning and development. And so this literally went every single staff member. It doesn't matter who you were, doesn't matter what your title is, doesn't matter, how much more or less you get paid, you were expected to be in that training. And so we received our leadership training in May. It was end of May, beginning of June. And the all school, all staff PLD was at the beginning of January. So then in the beginning of January, everybody sat in the assembly hall. We had our training and we were expected to start implementing that. But as a leader, I already had the leadership training. So I knew what was coming with this, because they had mentioned to us as leaders what the training for the employees was going to be all about, and then what was going to be the expectation for us as leaders on implementing this brand new culture. So we knew that there was a level of accountability. We knew that we had a big role to play in keeping our employees accountable and then feeding that back to the principal. That was the only way she could keep her finger on the pulse. I mean, there's a lot of staff, 250 people, maybe even more, if you maybe even included all the gardening and the cleaning staff. Because, by the way, they attended this as well. So it was not only the teachers or people who worked with students, it was everybody from finance, HR, gardening, cleaning, you name it, they all attended this training. Because if you want to set the culture of your school, you need to include everyone, and literally everyone needs to be involved in this. And so the expectation was set to us as leaders that, okay, employees have now had the training. Now we need to start speaking to our employees about this. So we made it a regular thing to add to our team meeting agendas. So every leader knew that for the next couple of months and even a year, you had to talk about culture building and the culture that the school wants, and how, like, if you could rate your team on a scale of 1 to 10, how did they go? But so you were not alone. Like as leaders, we were not expected to do it alone. Like I said, we fed everything back to the principal, and then she would say, okay, what I think you need to do next is this, 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 this. And if there were continuously people who were really difficult and who didn't want to buy into this new culture that the principal was building, she would actually deal with them directly. So I think that was the nice thing about the principal and about my line manager, was two up, is because she got involved. She didn't just expect us to do everything. She actually got involved as well. She got her hands dirty. Okay. And so I think this is one of the things that I really want to touch on. I understand as a school leader, because I could see my line manager sometimes really struggling, because there's a lot of people. And she didn't visibly show that she struggled, but I just always thought to myself, wow, what a big role to play if you're leading so many people. Because not only are you leading the staff, but you also have to be the face of the school to the parents. And if there's any parent issues, yes, they will deal with that with the teacher, but sometimes it gets escalated up to the principal, because the parents want to know that the principal is aware of the situation or of how their staff acted or whatever it might have been. So the principal really had to get her hands dirty with the parents as well, getting involved with a lot of, issues with the parents and the teachers and the students and X, Y, and Z. So yes, it was a big undertaking, but did it work? I think that's the one thing that I want to ask you is, do you think that this worked? Yes, it 100% did. And look, yes, there were still your little black apples, those people or black sheep, those people who just really refused to do the right thing. You know what? They ended up leaving because they felt compelled that this was not the place for them to work anymore. And that is very sad if you lose a colleague who you've worked with for a very long time and who you get along with really well, and then they leave. But sometimes that's the best thing for the culture of the school, is if you have someone who leaves. And sometimes it is the people who've been there for 20 years. Sometimes it's been those people who have been there. They've seen 5 principals through, and now they get this new principal who wants to change the culture. They're going to feel like, why should I change? I've been here for 20 years. I've seen 5 principals. Like, every single principal has something new that I have to follow. Why should I follow you? I get it. I 100% get that. But you just have to follow the path of what I'm going to share with you right now. So that's my example that I'm going to use. And I thought it would be good if I gave it to you at the beginning of the episode. You don't have to wait the whole episode to hear the whole thing. But what I want to break down for you is what I learned from that situation. And look, this principal is not a Christian. She didn't follow biblical principles on how to deal with culture. But I had a look at what she did, and I thought to myself, well, how can we actually apply biblical principles to what she did so that you, as a Christian school leader, can actually do what she did, but from a biblical perspective? And so the first thing that she basically did that you can do is name what's broken. Now, Nehemiah 2 verse 17, it says, you see the trouble we are in, come, let us rebuild. So before Nehemiah actually rebuilt the walls, he acknowledged what was broken. In the same way, you need to courageously name the cultural issues. Is there gossip? Is there cliques? Is there power struggles? Are there people that are burnt out and disillusioned? Are there people who are just not for you, meaning that they don't support you in what you're doing, but they are just doing whatever they want to do because maybe the previous leader allowed that. Maybe the previous leader was oblivious to that. You maybe won't know. But what you need to do is you need to speak honestly, and you need to speak with your leadership team. Obviously, that's where it's all going to start. You're going to speak with your leadership team, and you're going to say, name what's broken. You're going to name what's broken to your leadership team. But obviously, get your leadership team in on that. So what was really great is when I left that school, actually, they had a brand new principal as well. And so I had actually resigned before the new principal came in. And in my exit interview, I was very honest with the principal about some of the issues that I'd noticed in the school, because I felt, well, I'm not on the leadership team. I'm not like on the executive team. That's what they called them, the executive team. But I still felt compelled to share what I had noticed as someone who was quite involved with various departments. So my department, or I would meet with various heads of departments on a weekly or even fortnightly basis. And I could see things because I just started noticing where things were broken and where things needed fixing. And one of the suggestions that I had made because our principal resigned, this amazing principal that I just spoke about. And then there was an interim principal. So with the interim principal, I actually suggested that we do a swap because, and I know it wasn't realistic, so that's why it wasn't, taken on board. But I actually thought, maybe once a year we could do, or maybe even once a quarter, because we work in quarters or in terms. We say terms, but term is actually, for some reason, anyway, it doesn't matter. I digress, but we work in terms here, but it's actually quarters. And so I'd actually suggested that we do a department swap, that people get the opportunity to go and work in a different department for the day. The reason why I had suggested that, I understand from a logistic perspective that wasn't going to be possible, but the reason why I suggested that is I really felt that department to department were not respecting each other. One department would say something mean about another department because they were just not knowledgeable about what that department was doing. And so this came up very often because I would meet with various departments. So if I would meet with, and I don't want to, say any names of any departments, just in case. I know nobody of that school is listening to the show, but just in case, I still want to make sure that I remain confidential in that space. But I would sit with one department and they would say, yes, but this department really have to pull up their socks. So all that they do the whole day is work with X, Y, and Z, like, why can't they do it? And so, there was a lot of negativity surrounding thought processes of other departments. And this is something I picked up because not only one department did it, lots of the departments actually did it. And so I actually suggested, well, maybe you do a swap. Not everyone, of course, you can't swap everyone at the same time, but maybe once a quarter, you swap someone from a department to another department so that they can have the experience of what that department does in a day and get there and understand that, this is what they actually do for the whole day long. They don't just do X, Y, and Z as you thought they did. And again, from a logistic perspective, I understand it wasn't possible. But it was an issue that I had actually brought up to the new principal in my exit interview. And what was interesting is she actually said to me, you know what, I'm so glad you mentioned this because I've already picked that up as well. And I've already mentioned it to the executive team. So that was amazing because it showed me that as a new leader, she had her ears and eyes open for what was broken. That's number one, of name what's broken. And the thing that was broken at that point in time was a lack of respect from department to department. And the departments were doing a great job in their own, but they were just not respecting each other. So how can you have a cohesive team if you are not respecting other departments at your school, right? And so the second thing that I felt that the principal that had rebuilt the culture at the school did was she rebuilt on values, not just rules. Now, yes, there were policies and procedures, and I'm a very big advocate for policies and procedures and having those things in place, because if you have them in place, it's clear to people what are the expectations of them. You then make sure that these policies and procedures are communicated extremely well during an onboarding process so that people can't come in and say, oh, I never knew that, or this wasn't made clear to me, or when they're sitting in a performance management because they've not done something, then they can't go back and say, well, I never knew that, or nobody ever communicated that with me. So policies and procedures, or SOPs, do have their place, and I'm a firm believer in them. However, they cannot be the only thing you are basing your culture on. It won't work. Yes, it's important, but it can't be the only thing. So you're going to rebuild your culture on values and not just rules. Now, in Matthew 22, verse 37 to 39, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'll sum it up. It says, well, the first part of it says, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. So that's the end of that, because it was in this part that the Pharisees had actually asked Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? And he said, love the Lord your God as you love yourself. But that's not the only one. It's also love your neighbor as yourself. And so, as a principal, you need to ask and you need to work out with your leadership team, what do we want to be known for? Do we want to be known for kindness, respect, teamwork, spiritual maturity? If you're a Christian school, if you're not in a Christian school, then that's going to be something different. And I do have some reflective questions for you that I will pop in the show notes. I actually forgot with the previous one to give you that reflection question, but that's okay. I'll put it in the show notes for each of these points of the three. I'll put them in the show notes for you, but you do need to ask, what do we want to be known for? So this is actually a really great exercise that you can do with your whole team, with the whole school team, doesn't matter how many. So you can say to your executive team or to your leadership team that we're going to do this exercise. What do we want to be known for? So the executive team is going to go to their team, the people who they line manage, and they're going to say, okay, we're going to do an exercise. What do we want to be known for? And the various leadership teams can do that exercise. Then those leadership teams are going to go to their employees, or those leaders like heads of departments are going to go to their teams and say, okay, what do we want to be known for? So you literally, again, like that triangle, you go and do that exercise. Everybody does that exercise. Then all those sheets of paper or all the post-it notes, or maybe you can do it digitally or something like that, where your executive team or your leadership team can actually look at it all together. So then what you do is you're going to look at what everyone said. What do we want to be known for? Let's say, for example, there were 5 things that everybody said in the school conclusively what they want to be known for. Then those are the 5 things you're going to communicate. And obviously, I'm saying this is as obviously, but okay, maybe it's not as obvious for some. But what you should have done before you started this exercise was communicate to the whole school team that this was what you're going to do. We're going to do a whole school exercise where we're going to decide what we want to be known for. We're going to start it in our various teams, and then from there, everything's going to come to my executive team, and we're going to see what everybody says. And then from there, we're going to make a decision. Because you can't have, you're going to have maybe 50 odd different suggestions of what you want to be known for, but your team's going to have to pick. That's why they're the executive team. That's why they're the leadership team, so that you guys can make that decision as a school leadership team. And then what you're going to do is you're going to communicate that back to the whole school, and you can even ask your marketing team to make up some posters, to have big banners printed that our school is known for kindness, respect, teamwork, and X, Y, and Z. And then those could be put up in the various staff rooms across the school, and you can make sure that when your leaders have their staff meetings, that they talk about those things. What does it mean to be kind? What does it mean to have respect? What does teamwork look like? Because again, it can be subjective. Kindness from one person could be different from what another person thinks kindness is. I'm telling you, you have to make it so explicit and so clear. What does respect look like? You're going to have to make it explicit and clear. Don't treat them like children. Don't want them to feel like they're being treated like children. But what I do need to know is, what is the expectation when I'm saying be kind to another person? Okay. Sometimes people just, unfortunately, it's not obvious to them. So we have to make it obvious to them. And then ask yourself this question, is what 3 biblical values would I want our team culture to be known for? And then the last thing that I want to say is bring your people into the vision. So this is exactly what we did in the previous step, is we got everybody on board to say what we want to be known for. Proverbs 29 verse 18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And so I want you to know that you need to bring whole school team into this. Yes, it is an executive decision, but how can you make your whole school team feel as if they're involved in something bigger than just themselves, something bigger than just the little team that they're part of? And this is why that previous exercise from the previous one that I mentioned is so important, because then people feel as if they have a say. You can even come up with a team slogan and have teams brainstorm team slogans, and then the executive team again can make sure, or people can vote. People can actually vote. The voting is also good because again it shows people that they have a voice. And then when you are asking them to have their input, share your heart and invite them for their input. Tell them why this is so important. Tell them why having a school culture where everybody's respected, where everybody's kind to each other, why it is important. And most importantly, keep bringing it up and keep bringing it back to the purpose and the mission of the school. And when people know why the culture shift matters, they're more willing to engage in the how, because this is the how. You are doing the how of how we're going to do this. And unfortunately, you can't force them to buy in, but you can inspire it. Unfortunately, people will feel forced, no matter how gentle or how kind or how whatever you are about this. People will feel that you're forcing them. Those people will leave eventually because they're not going to feel like they resonate with your leadership. That's just what it is. One of the main reasons I left, and I'm not sure that I've shared this on the show, and I want to be sensitive to an amazing school that I worked at. That school was absolutely amazing, and I would go and work there again in a heartbeat. But one of the reasons I left that school as a director was I did not feel that my vision for what I wanted for my future or my leadership aligned with the executive team anymore. And it wasn't necessarily the principal, because again, remember I had mentioned the principal had resigned, then there was an interim principal, and then there was a new principal. So in the meantime, I didn't really build a relationship with the interim principal or the new principal, but again, the executive team remained the same. And I did not feel in alignment with some of the decisions that they were making. So again, it was personal to me. That school is still amazing. Again, I would go back in a heartbeat. I still know people who work there, and they're very happy, and they don't have any issues. They feel in alignment, and they're Christian as well. So I know Christian people who work at that school who still work there, and they love it. So again, I would go back in a heartbeat, but that was one of the decisions I left, was I just didn't feel in alignment anymore. And so this is going to be the same for you. If you start inviting people into a culture that is going to be more kind, respectful, and just really a great place to work at, people won't, the people who don't want to be like that, they're not going to feel aligned anymore, and they're going to leave. And that's ultimately what you want. You want them to leave before you have to fire them. So ask yourself, have I clearly communicated the vision for our team, for our school, and how, and then for yourself, this is a personal question to yourself, how it connects to God's calling for our school. As a Christian school leader, you do have the responsibility to also ensure that what you are doing is connected to God's calling. But it can be tough because your executive team might not be Christian. Nobody in your executive team, maybe your leadership team, your whole leadership team, maybe even the school. There'll be the odd one or two people that are Christian. But you need to also pray for your school. You need to pray for your leadership team. You need to pray for your executive team, because that's a really good way that you can also say to the Lord, Lord, I'm here and I want to lead like you. I want to lead like the example that Jesus gave. But I need your help because this is tough. I'm working with worldly people. Okay, let's recap those three things. Number one, name what's broken. Remember that you can't change what you won't acknowledge. It's very important to acknowledge what's broken. Number two, rebuild on values, not rules. So this is going to be important. Ground your team in shared values. So again, bring everybody on board, which goes along with the third one, is bring people into the vision. Cast the vision with clarity and invite others to help carry it. So it can't just come from above. Sometimes we want to lead from above, and we want to say that it's my way or the highway. I'm the principal of the school and you will listen to me. But if you're going to lead like that, people are going to kick against you. They're going to build up their defensive walls, and you're not going to get very far and you're not going to enjoy your job very much. And I want to close by saying that rebuilding is hard. It's definitely not easy to rebuild a school culture, but it is a way for you to do God's holy work. It is your mission. It can be your missionary field. And you've been placed in your leadership role for a reason and on purpose. And even if the culture has been broken, it's been cracked, it's been, it's got big fat holes in it, God can help you restore this from the inside out. And Psalm 127 verse 1 says, unless the Lord builds the house, the builder labors in vain. Let that sink in. Unless the Lord builds the house, so unless the Lord builds your school, the builder, which is you, labor in vain. Invite God into the rebuild, and you won't be building alone. Make sure that you pray on a daily basis, spend time in the Word, because that is extremely important. The Word it's a living Word of God, and it's about God, and it's about who and what He is for us. And the Bible is not about us, actually, it's about God. But if you spend time in the Word, you get to know God. You get to learn more about Him, His attributes, and how amazing He is. And so let's end this episode with a prayer. Dear God, thank you so much for placing this school leader in their school for where they are in this moment and in this season, God. I want to pray, Lord, where they have a broken school culture, that you will come and help them rebuild this. Come and help them fix those holes, fix those cracks, and not just fix it temporarily, but fix it permanently. Lord, I want to pray for the leader who is going to sit with their executive team or sit with their leadership team to start this process, to start talking about what they can do. I want to pray that if their executive team is not on board, that, Lord, you will give them the strength to speak up with confidence and courage. This is what they need, Lord, is they need confidence and courage to speak up to their executive team, to speak up to their school team, so that they can fix what is broken. And Lord, I want to just pray that each and every one of them know that they are worthy and that they are called for this position that they're in at the moment, Lord. You didn't just put them in that position by accident. They didn't just get into that position because they knew someone or because somebody thought that they were nice. They might think that, but Lord, you made sure that they got into that position because you called them into that position. And we all know, Lord, that you don't call the qualified, but you qualified the called. So I want to pray, Lord, that you help these leaders to feel confident in what they need to do, help them to lead like Jesus and to lead boldly like what Jesus did, because Jesus was extremely bold and courageous for what he did. And he made sacrifices for his mission, Lord. And so I want to pray, Lord, for these leaders where they need to make sacrifices, where they need to be bold, that you would just lead them in every single part of their leadership role. And Lord, I want to pray that you will just keep your hand of protection over them, send your angels to protect them, and give them wisdom, insight, and knowledge where they need it on a daily basis to run their school as amazingly as you know that they can, and as you want them to run the school, Lord. And I want to pray for those leaders who struggle with people who are not Christians in their school, people who, if they're the only Christian or if there's only a handful of Christians in the school, Lord, help them, help that leader to still speak up with boldness, not necessarily from a biblical perspective, but Lord, from a values perspective, and saying that, these are the values that we want to be known for. And this is what we're going to stand up for. Respect, kindness, love, patience, all the fruits of the Spirit. And Lord, I want to just pray that you would just keep these people, that you would just keep them in your hand every single day, Lord. And that they would put on the armor of God before they go to school and know that wherever they go, Lord, you are with them and they are not alone. I pray this all in your mighty name. Amen. Well, that is it for the episode. If you have not joined the Women of Faith in Leadership community yet, I really want to encourage you to come to Facebook, come and join the community. I do a fortnightly teaching on becoming a Proverbs 31 woman and leader, and I'm really, really enjoying that. I'm considering putting it into a private podcast where you can go and subscribe to that. But to be able, if I do that, you need to either be in the Facebook group or you need to be on my newsletter to hear about that. That is not something that I will openly advertise here on this podcast. A private podcast is basically just a separate podcast with only one purpose, is to share that content. So it won't be ever on this podcast, but if you want to come and see me on video and come and see, it's much different to talk on video than what it is just to talk on a microphone. But come and join me in the Facebook group where I'll be sharing that on a fortnightly basis. And I do share other opportunities as well in there for you to share, and some other nuggets in there as well. So go to Facebook and search for Women of Faith in Leadership Community, or simply go to womenoffaithinleadership.com where you'll find a link to the community. Look forward to seeing you there, and we'll speak again next week. Bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts? It would mean so much to me to read your feedback. Also, it would really bless me big if you shared this episode with a fellow leader who might benefit from hearing today's message. And remember, put on the armor of God daily and walk by faith and not by sight. I'll meet you back on Monday for another episode.